Good morning. Today we are going to talk about pH and how it relates to plants. pH sounds like something very complex, but it really isn't. It's just a scale where we measure things that are acid and things that are alkaline. It's a scale of 0 to 14, basically like a ruler. And you put this ruler up against something and you measure how acidic or alkaline it is. So it's 0 to 14 with 7 being neutral. Gardeners love to talk about pH, but I think that some people don't really understand how this relates to plants and where plants generally fall on this spectrum. So what I hear a lot, and what I just took as gospel for a long time, was that plants that are sort of vegetable garden annual plants prefer more alkaline soil and trees prefer more acid soil. And I just took that as gospel and always tried to plant my trees in something, that was presumably more acid, and my vegetables in more alkaline. Now, the thing is it's so much more nuanced than that. I got a little bit suspicious last summer when I had planted lettuce in a bed that was really prepared for vegetables, and it was doing okay in that bed. But just outside the bed where I'd scattered some seeds by accident into the wood chip mulch, which is by nature a more acid environment, the seeds germinated there and did better than the plants that I had started inside and brought out and very carefully put into my well-manicured kitchen garden bed. So I would come and pick my lettuce from the bed, and then I could just pick it right out of the mulch right nearby. I was really surprised at how well that did, and it got me to thinking, like, maybe it's not all about pH, or maybe I was wrong that lettuce prefers like a more alkaline soil, or it could just be that mulch was perfect environment for lettuce. But why? Why would something that supposedly prefers more alkaline soil like growing in my wood chip mulch? So this winter I decided to do a little bit of digging and find out actually what is the pH tolerance range for lettuce. And it turns out that is somewhere between 6 and 7. So honestly, that's not alkaline. That is slightly acid soil. Neutral. You could consider that neutral, but it can tolerate a little bit of acidity. And then I started thinking about other vegetables and realizing I have no idea. I've heard that tomatoes grow in acid soil. Well, what does that really mean? So I went and did a little research. I found a bunch of data in the Old Farmer's Almanac from 2019, August 13th, done by Catherine Bickman. And so I took, and I'm going to put this up on the screen here, but what I did was I created charts, and they're actually on the website, on our website now, and so I'm going to put a link to that down below as well. But anyway, I created charts that listed some of the more common garden, food forest and kitchen garden and, trees and plants that, you might want to grow, and just so that you know what the real pH tolerance of those plants are, with the low to the high, and so you know where they fit into that range. And tomatoes, I found, were 5.5 to 7.5. So it turns out that they are very tolerant of acid, but also very tolerant of alkaline. 7.5 is, for a lot of the plants that I found, 7.5 was actually, even though it falls within the neutral range, was actually at sort of the medium to upper limit for most every plant on this list. So it turns out tomatoes very tolerant of different types of soil. So anyway, it's very handy to take a look at this list. The other thing that I found, though, because I wanted to break this down now by type of plant. So I broke my plants into categories of flowers, fruiting annuals, things like tomatoes, cucumbers, and that sort of thing. Fruit and nut perennials, and those are your fruit trees and your fruiting bushes, and vegetables. So that's other things that go in your vegetable garden that you're growing for like leaves and other parts rather than the fruit itself. And I put this information into a couple of other graphs, which you can also find on our website. Once again, the link will be below. But what I found was that almost 100% of these plants, whether they be flowers, fruiting annuals, perennial trees, or vegetables, they all were very tolerant of a slightly acid soil, neutral to slightly acid, so that in the 6 to 7 range. In fact, many of them fell within the 6 to 7.5 range. At least, in the upper end of that, at least 50% in each category could tolerate an alkaline soil of up to 7.5. And closer to an average of, say, maybe 30 or 40% could tolerate an acid soil at 5.5. So you've got this wide range, and you can see it in the chart, and then you can look at it by individual plant and see where that individual plant falls in. But just to give you averages and stuff, I just wanted to see if I had soil at a neutral pH, how would my plants do? And it turns out that if I had it actually slightly acid 6 to 7 pH soil, almost 100% of the plants that I would consider growing would do just fine in that soil. So it turns out that this is not quite as simple as you would think, and it doesn't break down strictly along lines of trees versus vegetables. So, to give you an example of trees, some of them are actually very tolerant of alkaline soil. And so let's see, I'm going to take a quick look down here. Like, for example, the plum tree, the pecan, and let's see, not so much the peach, but the even oranges and lemons are tolerant to about 8 on the pH scale. That is, getting into the alkaline range, and they are still okay with that. So you don't have to have an acid soil. You might want to get closer to the average, soil pH that they would be happy with, but gardening is not always about perfection. Sometimes you have to work with what you've got. And if you are planting a tree that is going to have a root system that goes all over the place, you can't control the pH of the soil everywhere it's going to go. That tree is going to work with you and find the soil that it needs and probably have a much wider tolerance than you would have thought. So, same goes for vegetables. You probably will find that they don't necessarily need quite as alkaline soil as you would think when you hear the word alkaline. When people say they prefer a more alkaline soil, I think the word more is the operative word, because they are really happy at right around neutral, but that is more, just ever so slightly more alkaline than the soil where trees might ideally, on average, be happy. Once again, though, type to type, it changes. Different varieties have different tolerances, and so you should look at that. If you've got compacted soil, and that soil then is more acid, and your trees are going to have to work through that, well, you should consider that when you plant a tree that is going to have to do that, because it might not be the ideal situation if that is not one of the more acid tolerant trees. However, the theme that I keep going back to in these videos is that plants are much more flexible than you think. So if you wait for perfection, if you wait to get that perfect pH level in your garden, if you wait to prepare everything so it's exactly perfect, you're going to waste a lot of time and you could be out there planting things. So I always say, get out there and try it, see what works for you. Maybe that lettuce will grow just fine in wood chip mulch. You don't know until you try it, and it's just a few seeds. So don't spend a lot of money on an expensive plant and then not bother preparing the soil. I would also say don't just plant a tree without thinking very carefully where you're putting it and how you're preparing it, because number one, they're expensive. Number two, they're for a long time. And I don't know if there's a number three, but I'm sure there's a number three that you can think of. And if you can think of that number three, drop it in the comments below. I would love to hear more from you. I'd really appreciate a thumbs up on this. And if you would subscribe to this channel, you'd be doing me a great big favor. So thank you so much for joining us. Check out the Food Forest Garden Club website, foodforestgardenclub.org. It is up and running, and I put all these handy graphs and stuff on there. Some of this, the website is member protected, but you can sign up as a member for 30 days. Doesn't cost you anything. After that, it's only $3 a month. It's really just to help me pay for the hosting costs and the fact that I spend a lot of time on this stuff. But really appreciate it. I look forward to interacting with you. And in the meantime, have yourself an awesome day.